Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nayaswami Padma, and I'm here today on Thursday, the last day of March, March 31st, to bring you a little bit of noontime inspiration from the teachings, the original teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. I'm still reading out of Swami Kriyananda's autobiography, The New Path, and in the section called Work versus Meditation, he says, Mrs. Brown, whose frail body never seemed to run out of energy, no matter how much she did, laughed merrily. You see, the very thought of pleasing God fills us with God's energy. Master tells us it's our unwillingness that cuts us off from that flow of energy. Very simple, clear principle. And yet, boy, how hard to remember that in the moments that we need it the most. Paramhansa Yogananda used to say, the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. And in this case, as she explains it here, that will isn't as much about willpower, although it can also apply to willpower, but it's about our willingness. Once we are willing to do something, the energy follows. The energy naturally flows. You know, they say that if we're enthusiastic about something, if we really embrace something with all our hearts, we can give it 700% of our energy. It requires the engagement of the heart in order to do anything in life well. And so this principle of our willingness being a prerequisite for us to do something really well and to have the energy to do it, and that is the topic in this context about work versus meditation, that we bring that spirit of willingness to it, and the greater the flow of energy, the greater the divine consciousness can come through us and be applied to the task at hand. And experiment with this sometime in your own life. I know I have in my life. When there is something I don't want to do, you know, we have that expression in English that we dig in our heels, literally. We sort of come to a hard stop because we don't want to do it. We're not, the desire, the heart's desire is not in it. In fact, it's against it. So we resist, and it creates friction. And we essentially are fighting against ourselves. And so we move one step forward and 2 steps back. And it seems like we never can get that thing done, not because it's so hard to do, difficult to do, not because no one is helping us to do it, and poor me, shucks. You know, it's because on some level we don't want to do it. We're unwilling to do it. And as a result, we're grating against ourselves. And the energy is not flowing. And the greater the will, the greater the flow of that energy, and ultimately the river of that energy comes from God, comes from our own highest self, And when that part of ourselves can be in alignment with that which it is that's in front of us to do, and we apply ourselves, then wonderful, great things can happen, often much greater things than we ever dream of ourselves, that we're able to have happen. You know, I've heard the story, some of you may have heard, about when there was a fire and there was a piano that had a person pinned down under it, and the fireman comes running into the room and lifts, I don't know how many times his own weight, the weight of that piano up, in order for that person to be released and to leave the room safely. And so it is that we have a lot more energy than we realize that we have, that comes to bear at any one point in time. And the greater our will, in this case, the will was there to rescue that person. The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy, much greater than we could ever imagine ourselves. Yogananda used to say that there's more energy in the pinch of flesh of one finger than there is to keep the entire city of Chicago lit for a week. And so more electricity, I should say. And so it is, they say that we're only using 2% of our brain at any one point in time. I remember hearing that in science class ever since I was a little girl. Well, there's only a fraction of the divine energy that resides within us, that we can draw on, the cosmic energy that is all around us, that can come to bear and help us with whatever it is we're trying to do in service of others. So the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. That's the theme of this small but large piece of teaching for today's noon inspiration. Joy to you, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye now.